My name is Tom Harper. I'm 18 and I live in New York with my mom and her husband Jeffrey. My mom often worked late, and Jeffrey, being a taxi driver, had unpredictable hours. We weren't particularly close, but we got along. He was the kind of person you could talk to about baseball or ask how to change the oil in a car, but nothing deeper than that. A few weeks ago, things started to feel different. At first, it was small things. His gaze lingered on me longer than usual. I caught him paying extra attention when I spoke, even though he was usually more interested in his phone or the TV. Then came unexpected gifts. He bought me expensive headphones, though I never asked for them. "Just because," he said. I was surprised but accepted them. Then there were other gestures. He started making me breakfast, leaving me small amounts of cash for lunch, offering to drive me anywhere, even if it was out of his way. None of these things were alarming on their own, but something about them unsettled me. One evening after coming home from practice, I found an envelope under my bedroom door. I picked it up, unfolded the note, and read the words. "You are special. Every time I see you smile, it makes my heart stop. I've admired you for a long time, but have been too afraid to say it. I hope one day you understand." At the bottom was a lipstick mark. My stomach turned. I looked around the apartment. It was empty. My mom was away on a business trip, and the only person who could have been home was Jeffrey. But the thought that it was him seemed absurd. It had to be a prank. Maybe one of my friends had slipped it in through the window or the door. But as the days passed, strange things continued to happen. One night, I woke up to the sound of a soft creak. In the darkness, I saw a faint shadow by my door, as if someone had been standing there, watching. I held my breath, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But when I turned on my nightlight, the hallway was empty. My heart pounded. From that night on, I started locking my door. Then I found something that made my skin crawl. While reaching for a book on my shelf, I accidentally knocked over a small hidden camera. It was positioned between the books, its lens pointed directly at my bed. I picked it up, my hands shaking. Someone had been recording. My stomach tightened as I tried to make sense of it. Who put this here? Should I tell my mom? A deep instinct told me she had no idea. The next day, I decided to set a trap. I placed the camera back where I found it, but adjusted its angle. If someone was monitoring me, they would surely fix it. And they did. When I came home from school, the camera had been moved back to its original position. A chill ran down my spine. I needed answers. Late that night, when the apartment was silent, I sneaked into the living room and grabbed Jeffrey's phone. My fingers trembled as I opened his photo gallery. My breath caught in my throat. There were pictures of my room, of me, sleeping, reading. The walls closed in around me. My pulse raced. This wasn't a prank. It had been him all along. I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. At that moment, I heard footsteps behind me. "Tom," he said softly. I turned sharply. Jeffrey stood in the doorway, watching me. "Were you going through my phone?" I couldn't answer. I could barely breathe. He sighed and sat down on the couch. "We need to talk." "About what?" My voice came out hoarse. He rubbed his temples, exhaling deeply. "About the truth." I stood frozen. "I've spent my whole life pretending to be someone I'm not," he continued. "I try to be what everyone expected, but I can't lie to myself anymore." I didn't understand what he was saying, but I knew where this was going. My entire body tensed. "I've decided to stop pretending," he said finally. "I'm leaving." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What?" "I can't live in this house anymore. I need to be myself. That same night, he packed his bags and left. My mom returned a few days later and found a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry, I can't pretend anymore." She tried calling him, but he didn't answer. A week passed. I still couldn't wrap my head around what had happened. And then, he showed up. I was walking out of school when I saw him standing by the gate, holding a bouquet of flowers. He looked different. He was wearing bright clothes, his face carefully groomed, his posture confident, yet uncertain. He looked like someone who had finally decided to be who they truly were. I stopped in my tracks. People around me started whispering, staring. I didn't walk up to him. I turned around and left, but I knew this wasn't over yet. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the image of Jeffrey standing outside my school, the bouquet in his hands, the look on his face, hopeful, desperate, determined. What did he expect? That I'd run into his arms? That I'd forget everything he had done? The invasion of privacy, the lingering stares, the hidden camera? The next day, I avoided the school gates and took the back exit, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow felt like his. Every figure in the crowd made my pulse spike. When I got home, I double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, but paranoia had already settled deep in my bones. Then the messages started. At first, they were simple. "I miss our talks. I was always so proud of you. I hope we can meet soon, just to talk." I ignored them, left them on read, but that didn't stop him. He sent emails, voicemails, handwritten letters shoved under our apartment door. In one of them, he wrote, "I know you're scared. I understand. But I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to be seen, Tom. Truly seen. You were the only person who ever made me feel alive." I couldn't take it anymore. I finally told my mom. She went pale as I spoke, her hands shaking as she clutched the edge of the kitchen counter. When I showed her the messages, the photos I had found, she covered her mouth, eyes welling up with tears. She swallowed hard. "I never saw it. I never thought." She didn't finish the sentence. The next morning, she went straight to the police. They took our statements, but since Jeffrey hadn't directly threatened me, all they could do was file a report. They suggested a restraining order, but I knew that wouldn't stop him if he really wanted to find me. And he did. A week later, I came home to find the apartment door slightly open. I froze. I knew my mom wouldn't leave it like that. Slowly, I pushed the door open, my heart hammering in my chest. The apartment was dark, except for the faint glow of the living room lamp. My breath caught when I saw the flowers on the coffee table. The same kind he had brought to my school. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle. I turned sharply. Jeffrey stood in the hallway, half hidden in the shadows. "Tom," he said quietly. "Please, just listen." I backed away toward the door, but he stepped forward, his expression pleading. "I know I scared you. I didn't mean to," he said. "I was lost. My whole life I was lost. But you made me feel like I wasn't invisible. You made me realize who I really was. I felt sick. You don't understand," he continued, his voice breaking. "I love you." Something inside me snapped. "Stop," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling. "Just stop." His face twisted with pain. "Tom, get out." He hesitated, his eyes filled with something desperate and broken. And then my mom's voice cut through the silence. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded. She stood at the doorway, her face white with rage, phone in hand. Jeffrey's face crumpled. He took a step back. "I just needed to talk to him," he murmured. "Get out," she screamed, "or I swear to God, I will call the police right now." For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. He hesitated for just a second longer before turning and walking out. My mom slammed the door behind him and locked it. That night, she called the police again. This time, they took it seriously. A restraining order was issued immediately. But it wasn't over. A few days later, I received a final message from an unknown number. I understand now. You don't see me the way I see you. I accept that. I just hope one day you'll forgive me. I'll leave you alone. I promise. But I'll always carry you in my heart. And then, just like that, he disappeared. Weeks passed, no messages, no sightings. It was like he had vanished from existence. But the damage was done. I stopped sleeping with my door unlocked. I double-checked the locks every night. I flinched at unexpected touches. I didn't trust smiles anymore. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I would wake up with the suffocating fear that I wasn't alone. That there was someone in the shadows, watching. I didn't know if that fear would ever go away. I always thought my life was simple and ordinary. A small house in the countryside, old furniture, a kitchen with peeling paint, and a stock of cheap noodles, canned food, and rice. My parents told me we lived modestly, that money wasn't the most important thing, and I got used to it. I didn't have expensive toys, new phones, or branded clothes, but it seemed normal. Sometimes I saw my parents leaving in the evenings, but they always said they were going to a night job just to make ends meet. I wasn't allowed in their bedroom without permission, and that also seemed normal. One evening, when I was 15, I woke up to a strange noise. It sounded like something creaked behind the wall. I listened carefully. It was coming from my parents' bedroom. Curiosity got the best of me, but I knew they didn't like it when I entered without their permission. Yet something inside me pushed me to check. I got out of bed and quietly crept to the door. It was slightly open. In the darkness, I could make out their silhouettes. They were moving near the old wardrobe that had always stood in the corner. My father pressed something, and suddenly, with a light click, the wardrobe started to move aside. My heart froze. Behind it, an entrance appeared, leading downward. I stood there, trying to process what I had just seen. My parents stepped down, and the wall shut behind them. My mind was racing with one thought. What the hell was that? I waited until everything was quiet, then approached the wardrobe, running my hands over it, searching for the same spot my father had touched. After a minute, my fingers found a small bump. I pressed it, a creak, a click, and the wardrobe slid open again. In front of me was a staircase descending into darkness. I took a deep breath and started down. My heart pounded so hard, I was afraid it would give me away. The steps creaked under my feet. The air was cool, but smelled expensive, something I had never sensed in our home. At the bottom, a corridor with white walls and soft lighting awaited me. I walked further and lost my breath. Before me stretched a massive underground villa, marble floors, glass walls, illuminated pools, a long hallway leading even deeper. I heard my parents' voices. They were laughing. I snuck closer, hid behind a column, and peeked out. They were sitting on leather couches in a luxurious living room, eating gourmet food and drinking from crystal glasses. They were completely different, not the tired, worn-out people I knew, but confident, wealthy individuals. A shiver ran down my spine. I kept going, peeked into the next room, and saw a wardrobe filled with designer clothes. The next door led to a hall with a huge screen, a racing simulator, and the latest technology. Further down, I found a gym with equipment I had only seen in movies and a golf course that I always thought belonged to our neighbors. I began to realize that the neighbors whose cars I had envied weren't neighbors at all. This was all my parents' property. My pulse pounded in my temples. They had lied to me my whole life, telling me we were poor, that we had to save every penny, that money was scarce. But they had been living in luxury, hiding it from me. Why? For what reason, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, to scream, but my feet carried me further on their own. At the end of the corridor, I saw a massive garage. Rows of gleaming cars, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, G-Wagons, everything I had only seen online was parked here, under our house, and nearby was an exit, a tunnel leading somewhere outside. It was the very same route my parents used to leave the house when they thought I was asleep. I couldn't hold back any longer. I walked into the living room, and my parents immediately fell silent when they saw me. Their faces first showed shock, then concern. "You have been lying to me all this time." My voice trembled. My mother glanced at my father. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes," he answered calmly. I felt everything inside me boiling. While my mother stood up, walked toward me, tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "We wanted you to grow up as a normal person, without corruption, without the feeling that money determines everything," she said quietly. "Normal. You fed me instant noodles when you could buy a restaurant. You made me think we were poor. We didn't want you to become spoiled," my father said firmly. "Money ruins people, son. We have seen what happens to wealthy kids. Wealth corrupts them. We wanted you to know the value of simple things." I was shaking. "You took away my choice. You deprived me of the truth." My father looked into my eyes. "Yes, maybe. But you grew up honest, strong, and independent. You didn't know you had money, so you learned to handle life on your own. Isn't that a good thing?" I clenched my fists. Everything inside me was storming, but a part of me understood that there was some truth in his words. But could I forgive the lie? I turned and left. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing I knew for sure: my life would never be the same. I walked out of their underground palace. My heart was pounding wildly. My thoughts were tangled. The air felt thick and heavy. I couldn't believe that my life had been a lie. I walked through the same wardrobe, returned to my room, lay on my bed, and stared at the ceiling. I didn't know what to feel: anger, resentment, confusion, maybe all at once. I had lived for 15 years thinking we were poor, that the world was like this, that life was a struggle, that I had to work hard for a future. While all this time my parents were bathing in luxury, I couldn't sleep. It felt like I had lost myself. In the morning I got up as usual, but something inside me had changed. I felt it. My parents were sitting in the kitchen. In front of them was the cheap oatmeal I had eaten all my life. But now it felt fake to me, like this was just a play. I sat across from them, silently watching. They were waiting for me to say something, but I didn't want to speak. My father put his spoon down, looked me in the eye, and said that he understood how hard this was for me. That they didn't expect me to find out so soon. That they had planned to tell me later when I was older. I just smirked, because what would have changed in a couple of years? A lie would still be a lie. My mother said they never meant to hurt me. They truly wanted me to know real life, that money doesn't bring happiness, but can take everything away. I couldn't believe it. I had spent my life dreaming of better things I couldn't afford. Yet they had always been there, just hidden underground. I walked out of the house. I needed to be alone. I walked through the village streets, looking at the neighbors who lived just like me. But now I knew that my life had been an illusion. I felt like a stranger in this world. I sat on an old bench by the store, where I always bought cheap snacks. I watched the people passing by and wondered why my parents did this. Then I remembered how my father always said that what matters is the kind of person you are, not how much money you have. I remembered how he taught me to work hard, how my mother told me that happiness is in the little things. And suddenly, I realized that all these years, I had never felt unhappy. Yes, I didn't have expensive things, but I always found joy in what I had. I had real friends. I had fun at school. I dreamed. I strived. I wasn't spoiled by money. I was ordinary, just like my parents wanted. I went back home, looked at them, and asked why I needed to know this now. My father sighed and said that now that I knew the truth, I had a choice. If I wanted to keep living in this house, they wouldn't stop me. If I wanted to move into their real home, the doors were open for me. I thought about it because now I didn't have to pretend to be poor, but at the same time, I didn't know if I wanted that luxurious life. I asked for time to think. My parents didn't pressure me. They said they would respect any decision I made. In the following weeks, I started noticing things I hadn't seen before. I saw how my simple life had taught me to value friendship, how I found happiness in small things, how I was happy just riding my old bike instead of a fancy car. I realized that money gives opportunities, but it doesn't make you happy. And then I decided that I didn't want to lose myself. I told my parents that I wanted to stay in our small house. I wanted to live as I had. But now I knew I had a choice, that at any moment I could open the wardrobe and enter another world, but only if I truly needed to. My parents smiled. They said they were proud of me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I truly understood why they had done all this. They weren't just hiding money. They were teaching me to be a person. And now I knew what really mattered in this world. And it wasn't wealth. It was who you are without it. My name is Jeremy. I'm 14 years old and I live in New York. My mother never spoke much about her family, and for as long as I could remember, she hadn't contacted my grandmother, Natasha. It was like a forbidden topic, one that made her jaw clench and her hands shake if I ever brought it up. All I knew was that my grandmother lived in a secluded Russian village, hidden deep within the forests, and for reasons never explained to me, my mother never wanted me to meet her. Then, one day, a plane ticket appeared in my hands. Mom told me that Grandma had reached out, asking to finally meet her grandson. At first, she hesitated, but after what seemed like an internal battle, she reluctantly agreed to send me for the summer. It's just a family visit, I told myself. What could possibly go wrong? When I landed in Russia, the air was different, thicker, colder, carrying a sense of something ancient and watching. I stepped into the crowded terminal, my stomach twisting with nervousness. And that's when I saw her, an elderly woman holding a worn-out cardboard sign with my name scribbled in shaky handwriting. She was tall and eerily thin, as if the years had drained all but the bare essentials from her body. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched too tightly over her sharp cheekbones. Deep wrinkles carved valleys into her face, and her long silver-gray hair hung in a single tight braid, almost too tight, as if she were trying to hold something in place. Her eyes gleamed with something I couldn't quite place, not warmth, but an unsettling sharpness. As I got closer, she smiled. Her lips curled back unnaturally far, revealing yellowed teeth, some chipped, some disturbingly long. "Jeremy, my dear grandson," she exclaimed, her voice raspy yet high-pitched, almost rehearsed. Before I could react, her clawed fingers wrapped around my wrist, cold and dry like brittle paper. The journey to the village was long and bumpy, the old minibus shaking and groaning with every pothole. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, gnarled trees looming over us like silent spectators. I stole a glance at my grandmother. She had barely spoken since we left. Instead, she sat hunched over, a frayed notebook clutched in her hands, scribbling something with feverish intensity. Her hand moved in sharp, erratic strokes. At times, she would suddenly stop breathing, freezing completely, her bony fingers hovering over the page. Then, without warning, she would resume sketching, as if nothing had happened. I never saw what she was drawing. Her house stood alone at the edge of the village, surrounded by dense, suffocating darkness. The wooden structure sagged, as if exhausted by time, its windows black and soulless, reflecting nothing. The air inside was thick, unmoving. It smelled of dust, damp wood, and something faintly metallic. That first night, I woke to scratching. It was a soft, slow, deliberate sound, echoing down the hallway. My breath hitched. I hesitated before inching toward the door, pressing my eye against the tiny gap. And then, I saw her. She was crawling on all fours, her long hair dragged across the floor, moving too fluidly, as if it had a mind of its own. Her fingers, too long, too sharp, raked against the wooden walls, leaving deep grooves. My throat tightened. Then, in an instant, she was gone. And then, she was right there, right at my door. Her sunken eyes stared unblinking, her face mere inches from the gap. And then, without warning, she slammed her head into the wall. Once, twice, again. A horrible wet thud with each impact. Blood smeared against the wood, but she didn't stop. Instead, she grinned, a jagged, unnatural smile, her lips splitting at the corners. "Why aren't you sleeping?" she shrieked. "Are you hungry? Come out! Grandma will make you pancakes." Her laughter twisted into piercing screams, her head hammering against the wall with increasing force. I locked the door and pressed myself against the corner of my room, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out my thoughts. Minutes passed, then silence. The next morning, she was normal again. Calm, cheerful, as if nothing had happened. She made breakfast, humming softly, her hands gentle as she set a plate of steaming pancakes in front of me. I couldn't eat. Later that day, I saw her outside, chopping firewood. But something was wrong. She wasn't just chopping, she was laughing. Not a quiet chuckle, a deep, wild, gut-wrenching cackle, swinging the axe as if having a conversation with someone unseen. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and recorded a video. Sent it to Mom. A few seconds later, my phone vibrated. The message read, "Run! I don't know who that is. That's not my mom." I barely had time to react before I heard it, the creak of the door behind me. She was inside. "Come now, sweetie," she cooed, tilting her head too far to the side. "Why don't you climb into the oven and give it a little scrub?" My body refused to move. She stepped closer. "Come on, Jeremy, don't be afraid. Grandma will make delicious pancakes. Just help me clean the oven first." Her fingers brushed my shoulder, light as a spider's touch. I ran. The front door wouldn't open. Her voice followed me, sing-song, teasing. "Where are you going, dear? We still have so much to do." I bolted upstairs, slamming the attic door shut behind me, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then I heard it. She wasn't walking up the stairs, she was crawling. I backed away, stumbling over discarded furniture. Then, I saw it. A metal hatch in the floor. I tore it open, a ladder leading downward into darkness. I climbed down, gasping. The air was thick with decay, and then I saw it. A bundle of cloth in the corner, a shape beneath it. I reached out. My stomach twisted. It was another woman. She looked just like my grandmother, but she wasn't moving. A voice slithered behind me. She was too weak. But now, I'm strong, my dear. I turned. She stood in the doorway, her skin writhing, as if something underneath was trying to get out. Her eyes were black voids. "Now, you'll stay with Grandma forever." I grabbed a rusted metal pipe and swung. It connected with a sickening crack. She howled, not in pain, but in rage. I ran, crawled through a narrow tunnel, filthy, suffocating. Behind me, a growl rumbled through the dark. I burst into the forest. I never stopped running. The villagers found me at dawn. I was shaking, covered in dirt, unable to speak. When the police arrived at the house, she was gone. Only the black claw marks on the walls remained. Later, I learned the truth. My real grandmother had been a caretaker at a local psychiatric hospital. She attended to a patient, a woman named Tatiana. A month ago, Tatiana trapped my grandmother and took her place. Now, she was Grandma. I returned to New York, but at night, I still hear whispers outside my window. "Why aren't you sleeping, sweetie? Are you hungry?" My name is Alex, I'm 22, I live in Chicago, and I work in IT. Just an ordinary guy, nothing special. Home, work, occasional meetups with friends. I never really thought about serious relationships, and I didn't have much time for them anyway. But one Saturday evening, while lying on the couch, I decided to download Tinder. Why not? As I was swiping through profiles, I came across Lana. Long dark hair, brown eyes, a subtle mysterious smile. Her bio was minimal. "I love night walks and good movies." Simplicity and mystery, the perfect combination. I swiped right, not expecting much, but a couple of hours later, I got the notification. It's a match. We started chatting, and it turned out that Lana wasn't just beautiful, but also witty, sarcastic, and had the same taste in movies and music as I did. She lived in a nearby neighborhood, studied design, loved old Tarantino films, and could talk about 90s music for hours. A few days later, I suggested we meet. We walked around the city at night, talking nonstop as if we had known each other forever. She laughed at my jokes, teased me, and her ease and authenticity made her even more attractive. I felt incredibly comfortable with her. We started dating. Every evening was spent together. Cafes, movies, amusement parks, late-night conversations on her rooftop until sunrise. I loved that Lana didn't try to be someone she wasn't. She could be incredibly sweet, yet she could also challenge my ridiculous theories about the ending of Fight Club. She never talked much about her past, but I didn't press her. The present was enough for me. After a month, I realized I was in love, but everything changed in an instant. We were at an amusement park, and Lana insisted we go on the Shivers. Adrenaline loop. A massive ride that lifted you upside down before plunging straight down. We secured our seats, fastened our belts, and the ride slowly climbed upward. I looked at Lana. She was laughing, her hair blowing in the wind. And then, as we flipped upside down, something flew off her head. A wig. I froze. The wind carried it down, and Lana immediately clutched her head, burying her face in her hands. My heart pounded in my chest. This had to be a joke. I looked at her, at him, at... Who? Lana trembled, gripping the safety belt. I was speechless. When the ride stopped, she bolted from her seat and ran. I was in shock, but my legs carried me after her. "Lana, stop!" I shouted, but she kept running. I caught up with her in a secluded corner behind the attraction. She was breathing heavily, her shoulders shaking. "Explain," I exhaled. She slowly lifted her head, and I saw the fear in her eyes. "Alex!" Her voice wavered. "Who are you?" I barely recognized my own voice. She looked away, clenched her fists, and finally said, "You know me." I frowned. "No? How? From where?" My mind was blank. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer. She looked into my eyes and said the words that made my blood run cold. "I'm Max." Something inside me shattered. Maximum. My childhood. My best friend. We had been inseparable until our teenage years pulled us in different directions. I got into sports and video games. He got into books and art. We became strangers. The last time I saw him was 3 years ago. And now, he stood before me. As Lana. As the girl I had been dating. The world spun. I grabbed my head. "No! This is impossible! Max! Lana! What?" I was gasping for air. "Alex, please listen." She took a step toward me, but I backed away. "You lied to me!" My voice was filled with anger and pain. I never thought it would go this far. I just wanted to be myself. Her voice was desperate. "Yourself? You've been playing with me for a month." It felt like the air was being sucked out of my lungs. "No, everything that happened between us, it was real," she shouted. I couldn't process it, couldn't understand. My heart pounded like it wanted to escape my chest. I need to leave." I turned and walked away, not even knowing where I was going. She didn't chase after me. My mind was a whirlwind of memories. Maximum, Lana, our childhood, our conversations, our jokes, our kisses, everything. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't get it out of my head. The next morning, a message arrived. "If you want to talk, I'll be at our spot." Our spot. The old cafe we used to go to after school. I didn't know why, but I went. When I walked in, she was already there. She looked exhausted. 2 coffees sat on the table. I sat down. We were silent for a minute. Then she started talking. She told me everything. How she had felt out of place in her body since childhood. How she couldn't tell me. How she had left to finally become who she was meant to be. How she found me on Tinder and couldn't resist. You were the only person I never wanted to lose, she whispered. I looked into her eyes and saw pain. But did I see Lana or Max? I don't know what to do with this, I admitted. She nodded. Neither do I. We sat in silence. The city buzzed outside. Everything was different. Everything was broken. But one thing was certain. This was still the same person I had shared my childhood with. What now? I didn't know. But I knew I had to find an answer. I sat across from her. Him? And still couldn't fully grasp it. My mind kept replaying memories. Max, our childhood, our adventures. Lana, our dates, our deep conversations. It was all colliding, tearing itself apart. I understand if you don't want to see me again, Lana said quietly, looking away. I stared at her, torn in two. A part of me wanted to walk away, pretend none of this had happened. Another part felt that what we had was too real to just erase. I don't know how to deal with this, I finally admitted. She gave a weak smile. Neither do I. We sat in silence for a few minutes, and then something happened that shattered my reality completely. The cafe door opened and someone walked in. Maximum. But that was impossible. I looked at him. Short dark hair, the same brown eyes, but Max. The real Max. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I slowly turned to Lana. She was frozen too, her face pale. What the hell? I barely spoke. The guy at the door frowned. Alex! His voice was lower than I remembered, but still familiar. Max? I gasped. I shoved my chair back, unable to comprehend what was happening. I turned to Lana, but she was silent, her hands shaking. What is going on? My voice shook. Max frowned. I thought you moved away. You disappeared 3 years ago. I could barely breathe. Yeah, I left. But now I'm back. I turned back to Lana. Then, who are you? She didn't answer. Then softly she whispered, I am not Max. My mind exploded. Then who the hell are you? She took a deep breath and looked at me. I'm his twin. The room spun. You're lying. I'm not. Her voice was quiet but firm. Our parents separated us when we were kids. They kept Max and sent me away. I was suffocating. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you only knew Max. If I had told you the truth on Tinder, you would have never met me. I turned to Max. He looked just as confused. Dude, what the hell are you talking about? That you have a brother. Max frowned, then laughed. What brother? My chest tightened. What? I'm an only child. I have no brother. I turned to Lana. She went pale. No, that's impossible. Her voice cracked. Lana! I could barely breathe. No, they lied to me. She clutched her head. Max watched us, completely lost. Who is this girl, Alex? I opened my mouth but had no answer. Lena suddenly ran out of the cafe. Lana! I ran after her, but she disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, stunned. Max walked up beside me, frowning. Dude, seriously, who was that? I swallowed hard. I don't know. And that was the scariest part. I was in my second year at Brooklyn College, living in a rented apartment near the subway, the kind with walls thin as paper, and a neighbor who played an out-of-tune guitar late into the night. I had finals coming up, piles of debt, and no thoughts in my head, except survival and exams. One day, my mom called me. Not texted, actually called, which was already unusual, and said a sentence that made my head spin. Grandma is pregnant. I froze. I thought it was a cruel joke or a glitch in reality. My grandmother was 80. She lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of Queens, grew roses, baked perfect apple charlottes, and yelled at neighbors whose dogs pooped on her lawn. I rushed to her house immediately, heart pounding with fear, confusion, disbelief. I needed to see her eyes, to hear the explanation. Maybe it was a prank or some tragic medical mistake. Grandma greeted me like nothing had happened, with a smile in a soft blue robe, flipping pancakes that filled the house with their sweet smell. But her eyes were different. Deep, glowing, soft, like those of a girl in love. "Is it true?" I asked, not even sure I wanted the answer. "It's true," she said, gently stroking her belly. "I'm carrying a new life, and it's the most wonderful thing that could have happened to me." I collapsed into a chair, the ground vanishing from under my feet. 80? And pregnant? She pulled out a folder with medical reports and showed me an ultrasound image, a tiny being, clearly formed, a visible heartbeat. I couldn't comprehend it, but doctors confirmed it. A real pregnancy. 18 weeks along, a biological miracle. And the surprises didn't stop there. A few weeks later, I saw a man walk into her house. In his 50s, tanned, lean, with kind eyes and hands marked by years of working the soil. This was Luis, her gardener. He had cared for her yard for 6 years, trimming bushes, replanting roses, digging flower beds. I had seen him before. Quiet, reserved, practically invisible. I never imagined anything personal could exist between them. But Grandma told me she was in love. Deeply. She said he looked at her like no one ever had. That around him she felt young again. Alive. Wanted. But everything fell apart when she told him about the baby. Luis vanished for a week. No calls, no texts. And when he returned, his face was stone cold. He said he couldn't be a father. That it was impossible. That he wasn't ready. She begged him. Held his hand. Cried. Pleaded. But he left. And never came back. After that, something frightening began to happen. She started writing him letters, 2 or 3 a day, long, emotional, desperate. She kept them in a box tied with a pink ribbon. Cried at night. Covered the house in his photos. On the fridge, the walls, the nightstand. She talked to him like he was still there. Set out 2 cups of tea, dinner, even perfumed napkins. My mom and I were stunned. We tried to convince her to see a doctor, but she refused. "I'm not sick," she said. "I'm just in love." The baby developed normally. Doctors shrugged, baffled but amazed, and in early September she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. 3.2 kilograms, dark hair, strong lungs. She named him Luisito. Grandma was radiant, glowing, singing lullabies in Spanish, whispering love into his tiny ears. She said she finally had everything, that he was her last and only purpose. But joy turned to anxiety, then fear, then paranoia. She began locking the doors with 4 bolts, shutting the blinds, whispering that the neighbors wanted to steal her child. One night, she ran into the street in her robe, barefoot, holding the baby, banging on doors and begging people to stop watching her. The neighbors called the police. Child services came. They took the baby. I watched her scream, sob, cling to a blanket, begging them not to take away her last reason to live. I stood against the wall, completely shattered. They placed her in a psychiatric hospital. Diagnosis: paranoid schizophrenia, triggered by severe emotional trauma. She's still there, in a white room, with a photograph of Luis tucked into the pocket of her robe. Mom visits her every week. I go less often. It still hurts. Luisito was adopted by a family upstate. I don't know if he remembers her. Maybe not. Maybe she's just a line in his medical file. Sometimes, I walk past her old house, where roses used to bloom. I stand by the gate, looking at the peeling walls, and I think, sometimes love really can create miracles. But sometimes, it breaks people beyond repair. 4 years passed. I graduated from college and started working at the local library. Not my dream job, but a steady one. Quiet. Peaceful. Among books, I could hide from the world when it got too loud inside. At first, I couldn't visit her. The pain and guilt were too much. Mom never pressured me. She just kept going every Sunday, bringing her favorite cookies and newspaper clippings. One spring day, I finally went. The clinic was bright and clean, with trimmed hedges and long white hallways. Grandma was sitting by a window, sketching with colored pencils. Her hand trembled a little, but her lines were strong and smooth. On the paper, a garden, a house, a baby stroller under a tree. She recognized me instantly, smiled. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. "You've grown up." I sat beside her. We didn't talk much. She showed me her drawings, a whole folder labeled Dreams of Home. There were scenes from her old life. The kitchen, the rose garden, the baby, Luis. "Do you still love him?" I asked. She shook her head gently. "I'm grateful to him," she said, "for giving me a reason to feel alive, even if only for a little while." The doctor said her condition had stabilized. She was taking part in art therapy, helping other patients, even organizing little events at the clinic. The director suggested a partial discharge program. Grandma smiled and said, "I want to live, not just remember, live." And she did. We started fixing up her house, hired a crew, repainted the walls, brought the garden back to life. Mom replanted the roses. I found Grandma's old recipe notebook and began baking her charlotte on Sundays. One weekend, Mom brought news. Child Services allowed us to write a letter to Luisito's adoptive family. Just a letter, nothing more. We thought long and hard about what to say. In the end, Grandma wrote by hand. "Dear ones, if he ever asks, tell him his grandmother loved him very much, that he was a miracle, that he came into this world not by accident, but because someone out there needed a real miracle. Please let him be happy. Let him live with a light heart. That's all I ask." A reply came in autumn, brief but warm. The adoptive parents wrote that Luisito was growing into a bright, curious boy who loved to draw, that his favorite book was The Garden of Wonders, a children's story with illustrations. They even enclosed one of his drawings, a house and a white-haired woman holding a boy in her arms. I cried when I showed it to Grandma. She stared at it for a long time, then pressed it to her chest. "He remembers," she whispered. "So it wasn't for nothing." Now she's 85. She lives with us again, in a house that smells like baked apples, with blooming roses and walls that no longer peel. Every day she draws. Every evening there are still 2 cups of tea on the table. One for her, one for me. No more pain, just memory, and me. I've realized that sometimes a miracle isn't something that changes reality. Sometimes it's what gives people the strength to survive it.